Welcome to the Great Basin Prescribed Fire and Smoke Transport Briefing for Wednesday, March 6th. Over the last 7 to 14 days, we've seen more significant precipitation, especially for western and northern areas of the Great Basin that have really been kind of on the outside of some of the precipitation over the last month or two. Some of the drier spots, however, over the last week or two have been southern Nevada and parts of the Arizona Strip. But obviously you can see with the recent significant snowstorm in the Sierra, precipitation well above normal, which is no surprise, but also above normal precipitation up into Idaho and even in parts of central Idaho, again that have been on the drier side. New snowfall over the last 48 hours has been confined to the northern half of the Great Basin, and generally modest amounts, but there are some amounts that are in the 6 to 12 inch range or a little bit higher, especially over western Wyoming. The snow depth is indicated on the right, and you can see our snowpack is now fairly healthy across all areas of the Great Basin with the exception of still central Idaho, which is still below normal. However, this recent storm brought areas in the Sierra to near normal or at normal, and then we are still seeing above normal snowpack across much of the rest of Nevada, into Utah, southeast Idaho, and into northern Arizona. Here are a couple of pictures from our recent snowstorm here in the Sierra and western Nevada. These two pictures are actually my house at 6,000 feet in western Nevada. We got 5 feet of snow, which was historic for that area for sure. And then you can see up in the lower left here, this is one of the ski resorts up in the Sierra, and they obviously got quite a bit more. Some of the peak gusts, obviously, not only with the snow associated with this storm, we had very strong winds across many areas of Nevada. These winds are actually in the Sierra, so the peak ridge wind gusts you can see were over 140 or even up to 190 miles per hour. So a very significant storm, especially for early March. Satellite loop from this morning shows still low pressure along the west coast. It is generating some cloud cover and light showers this morning over parts of northwest and northern Nevada, and then eastward into northern Utah, southern Idaho, and into Wyoming. So for today, we will see that area of low pressure track towards the west coast and a little bit further east, again with that band of moisture really over central areas of the Great Basin. Dispersion will be somewhat good over southern areas, but really poor as you go further north and the winds are quite a bit lighter up into Idaho. So as you can see, some of those transport winds, nothing overly strong, but just some breezes enough to keep the dispersion a little bit higher, so gusts in the teens and 20s over southern Utah and northern Arizona, and then also over northern Nevada into Utah, and a little bit breezier in western Wyoming. Mixing heights will remain high over the southern two-thirds of the Great Basin and lower further north. See, our temperatures today will remain cool across Idaho with highs only in the 20s and 30s in many areas, but we will see some warming over much of Nevada and Utah with highs in the 40s and 50s and then upper 60s in the far south. And you can see that probability of precipitation mostly affecting northern Nevada into southern Idaho, Wyoming, and northern Utah today. So we move into Thursday, this trough continues tracking eastward, so the precipitation moves over kind of the eastern side of the Great Basin. We will see some winds kicking up the transport winds across Nevada and Utah. And you can see those transport winds, again, mostly in the 20 to 25 mile per hour range. And then mixing heights will remain good across Nevada and Utah and lower further north. Temperatures will cool a few degrees from what we saw or what we will see today across Nevada and Utah, and actually warm a degree or two up into Idaho. Again, precipitation shifts east and south, so we will see precipitation over eastern and southern Nevada, much of Utah, and then into northern Arizona, but amount-wise should be on the lighter side. By Friday, a ridge builds in across the Great Basin for drier conditions, warmer temperatures, or gradually warming temperatures and lighter winds, although we will see some inversions start to set up. Some breezy northeast winds on the east side of the ridge will keep dispersion higher over southern and eastern Nevada and much of Utah into Arizona. And you can see those transport winds, gusty, generally 30 to 35 miles per hour, with some gusts around 40 miles per hour in the higher ridges across southern and eastern Nevada and Utah, which is where the higher mixing heights will remain. Temperatures on Friday, again, warm a couple of degrees on the west side of the basin and still remain cool over eastern areas with that northeast wind, especially across Utah. And looking at the precipitation, again, most of that precipitation moves off to the east. So our 3-day total precipitation certainly much lighter than what we saw with any storm recently, and generally affecting Nevada, Utah, and Arizona, but also clipping southern Idaho today into Wyoming. As we go into the weekend, this ridge starts to move eastward, but still generally drier conditions on Saturday. And by Sunday, the next area of low pressure approaches the west coast, so it will push some clouds and lighter showers into the western and northern half of the Great Basin, and also kick winds up a little bit, so we will have good dispersion for any burning across Nevada and Utah. And then by Monday, the system sweeps east, keeping precipitation over the eastern side of the basin, but still another area of low pressure approaching the northwest coast. And by Tuesday, this low moves into California and the Pacific Northwest, pushing that moisture and lighter precipitation across the Great Basin. So again, precipitation going into the weekend, generally drier conditions Friday and Saturday, but precipitation does start as we move into Sunday and into Monday morning over parts of Idaho and northwest Nevada. And then by early to the mid portion of next week, as those systems move through, we will see that precipitation affecting most of the northern two-thirds of the region. Most areas generally light precipitation, a little bit heavier in central Idaho mountains and in the Sierra, but again, still on the lighter side as far as winter or spring storms are concerned. And then the 7-day total precipitation, it looks like most areas at least get some lighter precipitation. Some of those drier spots in southern Nevada, southern Utah, at least we'll see an increase in relative humidity and maybe some cloud cover. The 8 to 14-day outlook taking us through the second and third week of March shows warmer conditions for the west coast and drier conditions for much of the Great Basin. We will have a period where a very strong ridge looks to move into the Great Basin later next week and through next weekend, which could give us some very warm temperatures, also some strong inversions in some areas, and then we will see a return of areas of low pressure the following week, but we certainly will have 3 to 5 or 6 days of some very nice, warm, and above normal temperatures. That concludes the briefing for today. Check back on Monday for the latest updates.